My name is Mikhail. I will be your presenter for today's webinar. I'm the Director of Curriculum Architecture at Web-based Solutions, training and consulting company based in Toronto. It's a very exciting topic. We are currently looking into kind of a developing curriculum around this particular point. In working with our clients, we always try to find this kind of a bleeding edge technology which we find useful. It might be subjective, but it looks like it has the right roots, and we've got a very nice implementation of this RPA initiative with the UiPath company behind it. So in this presentation, I will do a technical overview of RPA's capabilities and the value proposition. We will also talk about the UiPath, which is a solution which includes UiPath Studio for developing your workflows, plus, as expected in the modern day and age, cloud-based infrastructure. Arthur Clarke once formulated 3 laws. The first 2 doesn't kind of make much, kind of not very exciting, but the third one is really what technology gives us, right? So any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic, and it fully applies to our topic of today's presentation. I would like to make this presentation as useful for all of you. So put your question in the questions pane, and I'll try to get to it right away. I won't be probably able to. I cannot guarantee that I will be able to answer your question right away, but at least I will try to tackle it. I also have sent you the link to the PDF file, the slide deck of my today's presentation. It's in the chat window. So RPA, as you probably know, maybe you have heard, or maybe you are interested in what it is. It stands for Robotic Process Automation. In my opinion, it's a little bit of a hype. It's a little bit of too early in the game. Maybe later on, it will be a fully fledged, fully bodied robotic process automation. But now it's more of automating some of the mundane, technical, tedious tasks that would help you, your company, and probably your partners to achieve a level of automation which would help people stop doing this quite mundane, maybe sometimes non-human type of activities, copying, pasting, downloading, checking, which can be automated quite easily in today's using today's technology, right? The roots of RPA lie in business process management, and I myself, I did this type of thing before I joined Web-based Solutions. I'm a certified enterprise Java architect. I got it from Sun Microsystems quite a long time ago, and I've been working on mission critical applications. And in one company that I worked, we were trying to promote this business process management tooling to automate business processes. So generally, RPA is BPM, but it takes it to the next level. It tries to simulate low-level GUI interactions, like emulating users clicking on icon on the link, on checking the box, and things like that. And the way I see it to progress and finally fulfilling that promise to become fully robotic is to leverage to the fullest the ML and AI capabilities that are currently available in the cloud. RPA is essentially about smart agents, which are called bots. It's an abbreviation from robots. And bots are just functions that can run at scale. Usually it happens in the cloud. So let's understand the genesis, the origin of RPA. Even though RPA tries to distance itself, kind of keep that social distance from business process management, but you can see those kind of roots right away, right off the bat. For those of you who are not familiar with business process management, it's an exciting technology. It has been around for quite a long time. In my work, I used activity with I at the end, which is Eclipse-based activity kind of a diagram application, which allows you to put using the notations that I'm going to show you in a moment, together, stitch together and build from those Lego pieces your workflow. It's a standard. Currently, the last time I guess we used it, it was BPMN version 2, which was quite comprehensive with good support from the community and with tooling. But RPA tries to sort of they want to break with standards. That's what I guess when I was looking at it first, I realized that they just essentially don't want to implement. They would probably have built on top of BPM, but BPM is a standard, and it's always very difficult to implement a particular standard in fullest to become certified by a specific body. So that was kind of my take on it. And essentially, RPA has that hardwired, very tight coupling with the engine, with the RPA engine, as opposed to BPM, which is just specification, and the implementation is usually done in some sort of ESB technology. So here is an example of the traditional BPMN, stands for Notation for Business Process Management. It's a chart which you can create in Microsoft Visio, and there are tools which would allow you to compile it into a package which can be executed on BPMN engine, which is usually some sort of ESB, which acts as a runtime. So we've got 3 swim lanes: customer, Cantos is a company, and the supplier. And the flow starts from left and it goes to right. And as you see, we've got different activities which have specific notation, which you can easily recognize as, for example, you receive mail. That's where the starting point. The starting point is the customer is essentially placing an order, and you start processing. That plus sign means that you can click on it and it would expand, showing sub-processes. And then there would be trigger, which would react to an error, a bad order. There would be return email to the customer. You will fulfill an order in the backend office, backend sales, and then there would be sort of that forking of processes. Essentially, you can describe very complicated, very elaborate workflows, and then it will be executed. And you can configure, you can essentially create a very nice compact package, some sort of a bar file, which would be that kind of business archive, process archive. And success would probably be, it's a very simple workflow. It can be much more complicated. So who are the main players in this field, in the field of robotic process automation? Microsoft Power. Microsoft, they have offered their clients the Flow product for quite a long time, and it had been kind of gaining enough visibility and traction. It's a software as a service solution running in the Azure cloud. And then recently they rebranded it, and Microsoft is very tuned to what is happening in this kind of a landscape of process automation. And they currently get this new name. Microsoft marketing people are very creative, so they called it Power Automate. So it essentially can be anything, right? So they trying to gain this acceptance by people who come from business process automation side. And UiPath is a company which is privately owned. You won't be able to get the stock. Currently, there is a huge backing. So when I checked, I was kind of very surprised. $500 million, 500 million in cumulative investments. So stay tuned. They might, when they go public, they will probably attract a lot of attention. Kind of a new netscape, if you will. So they offer you the whole lineup of products, and I checked some of the interviews that there are two guys behind it, and the CIO, it was, he just mentioned that they're working on artificial intelligence. Essentially, it was something that they have a vision, but it will probably take some time. But what they currently have is enough for probably most of the mundane cases that are just there is plentiful of those use cases where you would like to automate those processes. So UiPath gives you a whole product line. The most interesting is that they combine both on-premise components and the cloud ones. So they have very big vision. So they're technically very strong. And we will be discussing UiPath Studio, which is essentially you can view as sort of a visual studio where you would create your process by dragging and dropping those artifacts. And as long as you are doing the right thing, you would be able to create quite sophisticated processing flows at a very fast pace. So your productivity, your velocity would be very high. It also offers UiPath, by the way. Studio is kind of a community edition you can download. There are certain features that might not be available. For that, you would need to get some enterprise features, but it's enough for you to get started and to get the taste of the band, so to speak, and see if you like it or not. Plus, they offer you the cloud portal. It's a SaaS solution which gives you a number of capabilities, which would there would be a slide which would show how things are stitched together, which essentially allows you to deploy things in the cloud, run it at scale, bundle it with cloud-based sources to read data from S3, maybe from Azure, and have additional security. You can also get Community Edition, which won't allow you to do this kind of unlimited number of robots. Scalability, I guess, would be probably limited to something very narrow, which would be good to get started. Probably would be able to get Enterprise Edition. I'm not sure. They're quite dynamic, and things might change somewhat. But UiPath, in my opinion, they're in the right place at the right time, and they've got the right technology behind it. When WebEdge is myself, we are in no way associated with those guys. With UiPath, they're very close-ended. I guess they know what they're doing, and they're doing it right. For me, it's just I see that the focus is there. Nothing really, no bells, no whistles, just the right tool for the right use cases. So our main components are Studio, UI robots. It's just that smart agent, which is a process, kind of a Lambda function, if you will, which performs a specific operation. And UiPath Orchestrator, which is a cloud-based solution, which allows you to orchestrate complicated solutions. So robots underpin the whole programmatic and processing infrastructure. those are agents which are just small services which used to build a workflow, which can be executed on demand on a particular event, the so-called unattended processing. So bot is probably a little bit of a misnomer, but some people, I don't know, like those things, because if you have a very nice name and good all-inclusive type of thing, which is just lends itself to interpretation by different people, and slowly they start fulfilling that promise, and that's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. It just happens, not always, but I guess if you have the right name, you will probably be able, if you would kind of be persistent and tenacious, you would be able to achieve. I guess SOAP with Simple Object Protocol was a good name, but it kind of wasn't properly implemented, and eventually it was superseded by RESTful services, right? So bots would perform those single microservices type of tasks, which would involve things like monitoring directories, downloading files, screen scraping. You would be able to specify the HTML path to a particular node on your HTML page and perform screen scraping. In this way, I guess UiPath just follows the same paradigm that other tools like Selenium testing tool follows, which is a very nice combination. I believe they didn't have this capability until they bought it from someone, and this was the right acquisition for them. And that simulation of low-level GUI interactions, like clicking where to position, essentially you can bring up a calculator application on your machine and then kind of perform summation and scrape the result back from the output window and read it back into your application, right? So so it's not only at the low level where RPA shines, also high level aggregation, such as connecting to a mail server, maybe uploading files, connecting to various cloud repositories. And then gradually they will start implementing some sort of AI capabilities slowly. In case of UiPath, you can probably see the first signs of that robotic angle in having some OCR libraries, which would allow you to add computer vision and perform, I don't know, maybe reading your check number or maybe address from an envelope to automate the processing of mail handling, QR codes. Probably it would take it to the next level, but it would probably take some time. But they're on the right way. There is a channel for that, definitely. Right, and in this way, you can say that probably Microsoft is positioned better than UiPath. They have definitely a better footprint, both in the cloud, in machine learning, and on-premise. So I think following that rebranding to Power Automate thing, they will start combining process automation with artificial intelligence. And eventually they would come with a whole suite of products around that theme. So staying with UiPath, let's take a look first at UiPath Studio. So it's essentially a GUI. It's a very nice, slick application, easy to use, very intuitive. It's always nice when you just start a particular system and you understand how it works without actually knowing the system. You'll just be on the same wavelength with the developers. I don't know, some people might have different kind of a flair due to the cultural background, maybe the technology background, different strokes for different folks. But generally, there is some sort of that broad common denominator, and if you are part of that crowd, then UiPath essentially it's just answers all the questions right away. They've got integration with VBA, Visual Basic for Application. So that means that it's a .NET kind of application, and you can use it as a glue to bind all those different pieces using your experience with .NET. If you are not familiar with VBA, I guess it's not very complicated to pick it up and become productive. So you've got a whole set of activities. There will be a slide showing kind of a screenshot of those activities. Essentially, pre-built templates for both procedures. You drag that template, which is sort of a blueprint for a particular task. You fill out properties, which is essentially kind of a, didn't quite dig deeply, but I believe they would probably use some sort of ActiveX technology to build a component to perform quite sophisticated operations. You can also perform recording of user activities, such as that you open a file. Let's say you launch an application like a notepad, and you simulate clicking on a file menu item on the toolbar, and then in that submenu you will select something like load or save. And then you will go to the next screen, searching for the file in that dialog. And the way they do it, they get the handle, the Windows handle, to that Windows that gets open. So Windows records every frame that they open, which is essentially a Windows application. And then they get access to its location, to all the components, its ID, and all those details, which would allow you to emulate user activities. And OCR integration, which I think would be a major, would see a major influx of activities in this area. They will start adding machine learning and AI capabilities here. So here is just a very small subset what you can see in that activities palette. The nice thing is that they don't force you to do that drag and drop type of thing, where you would kind of see, and that list is quite long, and you would probably expect they would be longer. There are categories, and sometimes it would become quite a pain. But that's what Microsoft was kind of forcing you to do, like for quite a long time. But then there is also command line. So they would open that search for activity widget, and you will start typing in, and it would perform that auto completion, that kind of IntelliSense type of search, and you will be able to locate a particular object as long as you know what you're looking for. Right? If there is a needle, and you will be able to trace it down that stack. Okay, so you can simulate the browser, you can close application. And one of the things that I found is, which is kind of useful, is that they give you a way to leverage the low-level command line. And PowerShell has full integration. PowerShell, it's command line for Windows, extremely powerful thing. You pretty much, if you're a sysadmin, you would probably just use it for a bigger chunk of your work. And from that, if you cannot find a particular activity, you can use that, or you can download and install a particular application and invoke it through the command line without getting to the UI, which would be faster, which would be a smaller application and more reliable. UiPath Orchestrator is a way to manage workflows in the cloud. So you can schedule, monitor, scale all those robots that make up your process. You can also interface with third-party services through the supported API. There is a whole bunch of those kind of hooks, which would allow you to pull out data from all over the world. So here is that slide I mentioned earlier, what Orchestrator does, what it is, and how it collaborates with different parts of that flow. So you've got the on-premise usually developer environment where you would have UiPath Studio, and those people in this role would be creating those packages which would contain all those activities bound by some code, some flow contrast control. It can be a sequence, essentially sequential processing from top to bottom, or it can be some sort of fork and merge type of activity in parallel, where you can execute things in parallel. You can have some sort of a state machine. They give you that choice to treat your particular workflow in a way that would best match your needs. So what you do after you start developing your code here, then you would package the UiPath code and upload it to the cloud. You need to have either community edition credentials or in the enterprise edition. So the system would create that repository of files, associations, who was the user, when it was done. Some security would be applied here as well. And then on demand or otherwise, you would be able to execute those jobs, and you would be able to monitor the processing. So scheduling would happen automatically, and like business users, people who don't have a very strong technical background would be able to manage those workflows. So you can have multiple offices. Interesting that they also mention front office and back office. It kind of shows that they've been thinking about those business process management notation type of activities where things would be processed in different parts of organization. You can also extend your flows collaborating with people offshore and improving on overall workflow. Okay, so that's the bigger picture. So the recording of manual GUI interactions is probably one of the things that many people find quite useful. So in addition to the obvious way where you would be able to scrape data from the web, where you would have some sort of XPath type of application extracting a specific node and getting the payload of that node. Or it can be XML, HTML, or it can be a web GUI application, Windows application. And that's where I guess it comes its strength. And particularly when you're in a business of merging, or when your company performs some sort of acquisition of other companies, and you would like to harmonize, create the master record of all customers so that you would consolidate everything. And this is usually quite a big pain. And the common process is just to hire contractors for 3 months and have those poor souls perform that mundane, quite routine type of thing, and then discard those people as no longer needed. So the whole process can be automated. And when you do perform this automation, you would be able to monitor it. You would be able to perform it much faster with fewer errors, having less kind of glitches. Of course, it's not going to be perfect, but at least you would be able to deal with the human error when people after lunch or towards the end of the week would get tired and would be prone to commit more errors, and their performance would suffer. So typing in text, finding UI element, not only on the web page, but also on some sort of GUI application. Scraping text, okay. So here's an example of an RPA sequence that you can create in UiPath Studio. Unfortunately, it's kind of shown horizontally. In fact, it's should be shown vertically. Just imagine that you can see it this way. It kind of would be 90 degrees up clockwise. So you start from loading application. This is what this process does is it just starts Notepad. It opens, I believe. Yeah, you're looking for a file. You simulate that event of clicking a file. You perform delay. So that delay essentially would help you to see how things, and you would be able to see this. I'm not going to do the demo. It would be always kind of not clean, and it would confuse you. But generally, got this impression that essentially you would be able to see how things unfold in front of you, in front before your own eyes. You would be able to see it. The delay, and essentially, it just creates that kind of 1 or 2 second delay for you to comprehend what's happening. So you will, and you will see how things are being typed in. Like keystrokes are generated, and when you do so, you would be able to click that open button in the open documents dialog. It's just part of, it's just a fragment of full processing pipeline, and it's quite sophisticated, and it's quite practical too, because you can just substitute another application for Notepad, and it can be anything. So this screenshot is borrowed from one of the labs that from the course that we developed, web-edge solutions developed. It's just a one-day class that quickly introduced people, just high octane training, no deviations, just right on doing the labs. And that's it. And at the end of the process, essentially, UiPath would return control to you, and it will be waiting there. You can put it into a loop, or you can schedule it to run once. You have some control over the scheduling. So this is the course that I was referring to, which is called, has the same name as my presentation. It's a one-day introduction to RPA with UiPath. So it's very kind of a short on what you can achieve with RPA. Usually that's where people, I guess, go overboard. They just spend the whole day explaining why it's needed, where, who has a place, and things like that. And for the most people who have technical background, they would immediately see what it is, right? You would understand without knowing. Okay, so that's it. Any questions, guys? So you can put your question in the questions pane. As I said, I see some folks joined us after I started. The link to the document, to the slide deck, is in the chat window. Maybe I can show you a little bit of. So the questions: do you know if other companies like SMA, Novexpert are involving? I'm not familiar, Thomas. I'm not familiar with those companies. In my capacity, I pretty much, I guess, we see that this has a potential, and we are testing the waters if people are interested. And if there is a particular tool or a particular system that you would like to get training right as quickly as possible, kind of in 2, maybe 3 days, then let us know. We would develop this. We've got resources for that. What are the types of actions expandable, or are they limited? Yes, Michelle, you can develop your own actions. There's a boilerplate code that you can expand. It's just base class that you can expand. And what's interesting is that those actions are quite extensive. And you would probably find the particular action a very close one. If not, then I would suggest before you start developing your own activity, take a look at the PowerShell. This is command line. And whenever you want to perform, like, I don't know, maybe FTP, or maybe you would like to get a file, kind of a launch type, kind of a wget Linux-like of tool, to get a file and quickly download it without much, I don't know, going through all the hoops, performing SSHing operations, things like that. Yes, you can create your own, and those actions actually they're configurable as well. They allow you to execute certain piece of code, like kind of on setup and tear down type of thing, kind of a life cycle of a particular control. So it's interesting, and it's fully programmable. They currently support VBA. So if you're familiar with Excel and you use VBA in Excel, that's what it is. And it has integration with Excel. You can scrape data from Excel. You can connect to practically all known databases. Yeah, I just wanted to show you if there is would be a way for me to do that. Just give me a second. Yeah, I'm referring to this class which Webage developed, and it's a one day, very fast paced. It quickly introduces people to BPMN, what you would expect. Eventually, this is something that you should always check against, because that's the right thing. It's a specification which has been used in production at enterprise level, and probably you should kind of always keep an eye on what's happening. By the way, I before this presentation, I checked, and activity is still there. They're still using, they have the market, they've got interest, and I guess more than 10 years ago when I used it, it was good at that time. Now it's probably better. Yeah, what I would want to show you, labs. So essentially you would learn UiPath Studio, and you would quickly learn some of the skills that you would find useful. And the things like monitoring directories for file arrival, integration with PowerShell, and simulating GUI user interaction. So those pretty much cover all the major areas where you would be interested in using UiPath. Okay, thank you very much for attending. I do hope that you found this presentation interesting.